If I ever get stressed teaching, what do I do to take my mind off it? Okay, so the first thing to say is, I get stressed in teaching all the time. Teaching is quite stressful. And not that that's a bad thing. Stress in itself, it helps us perform at our peak level and do our best, right? At least when you don't overstress. And certainly there have been times where it's like, oh my gosh, I've got so many things to do and so little time to do it. I don't know if you ever had a moment in your life, maybe when you were younger, where time just seemed to drag on forever. Like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored, this day will never end. And at some point, maybe you've already passed it, you experienced the reverse. You're like, I have so little time to do all the things I need to do. Like, I can't believe it's already Friday. I was supposed to get this, and this done, right? Or like, when did it become May? Like, how did that happen? So definitely that's an experience, like meeting deadlines and just having a lot of responsibilities and weighing on your mind. What do I do to address those and sort of take care of myself? It's really important that you do, by the way. That's not automatic. And a lot of teachers actually, they kind of burn themselves out because teaching is a task that is never finished. You can always prepare that lesson more thoroughly. You can always make that assessment task like more polished up. You can always give more detailed feedback to your students on what they've submitted to you. You can always spend more individual time helping students when they come to you at lunchtime or before school. You can always do more of those things as opposed to say, I work in a factory and I clock in at 9 o'clock and I work at my machine and I make sure it pumps out things correctly, and then when it's 5 o'clock, I leave and I'm nowhere near the factory. I physically can't work because I'm not there, right? Teaching's not like that. And so in terms of self-care, there are a few things that are really important. I'm going to pick out two main ones. Number one, your physical needs, and number two, your social needs. So under physical needs, I put things like eating and sleeping and exercising well. Those, in my experience, are seldom things that happen well automatically. Our tendency, some people love cooking. Good for them, but the vast majority of us, I think it's kind of like, I'd rather take the easy and simple and fast option, which is often not the healthy option, right? So eating well is really vital. Same with sleep. Again, like we so often, we cut into our sleep in order to get more stuff done, but often actually the reverse happens because you get less sleep, so the quality of what you do is worse, and then you're like, oh, I just shot myself in the foot. This is actually a very famous study of the effects of sleep deprivation on cognitive performance, right? And they had 3 groups of people who they tested out like the effects of sleep. So the first was the control group, where it's like, you just sleep normal and then we'll get you to do a test, and like a cognitive test, see how you go, right? Then there was a second group that they said the night before, we're basically going to deprive you of sleep. Like, we're going to play loud noise, lights are on, you're not going to be able to pretty much get any sleep, and then we're going to see how you go the next day, right? And then there was a third group that instead of just giving them one terrible night's sleep, they gave them 2 weeks where they took off about an hour of sleep from what they normally would get, and they would forcibly wake them up before they wanted to wake up for about a couple of weeks. So control, 1 sleepless night, and a couple of weeks of just a little bit less. The control group, we got their benchmark, like this is how they perform, this is like normal. You would predict, obviously, that the group that got sleep deprived did worse, right? And then they looked at how much they got worse. Here was the really mind-blowing thing. That third group, right? How do you think they would perform? Let's just say that the control group was, let's just call them an 8 out of 10, is like the average score. And let's say like that sleep deprived group was something like 4 out of 10, right? It's like, oh, obviously they did much worse. Where would you predict that the third group, which just had a little bit of sleep, where would you predict they performed?
Probably really bad.
Probably really bad is accurate. They didn't quite perform as bad as that second group, but here's the thing, right? They performed almost as bad, something like a 5 out of 10. But here's the crazy thing, right? The group that was sleep deprived, they knew that they did badly. They were like, oh my gosh, I just couldn't think, like I couldn't concentrate. Of course I expected to do badly. That third group, they actually thought they did okay. Like they were like, yeah, I was performing about normal, right? This is what I'm normally like. Like I've gotten used to having less sleep and performing with a general fog around my mind. But of course they didn't, they performed suboptimally because they'd been deprived of as much sleep as they actually wanted. So there's a real lesson there for how much we guard our own sleep. It creeps up on us so, sneakily, and it has to be guarded, especially in our world where we're looking at our phones like up until the moment we go to sleep, and that also has its demonstrated effects on how well we actually rest. And then exercise, that goes without saying. There's a very small subset of the population who just love to exercise, and for the rest of us mere mortals, we actually have to put time and thought and planning into that, right? And that's really important if you're not physically fit, So there's your physical needs. The other one that's really crucial is your social needs. You've got to have someone who you can talk to and debrief about the stressful things you go through. Sometimes you will just have a terrible day. Like, you will start the day, you'll arrive late to school and your lessons won't go to plan, and there will be students who don't want to learn, or your technology just like explodes in your face, and then you have to make like a phone call to a parent at lunchtime and it goes badly because the parent's angry and you're like, my whole day was just a train wreck. You've got to be able to debrief that with someone. You've got to be able to talk through that and, number one, have someone understand what you've gone through and feel like, okay, I'm not going crazy. I just had a bad day, and have them encourage you. And also to debrief and process that and say, okay, why did it go badly? And not just blame yourself. That's a really, really big thing. Like, teachers often take a lot of guilt and responsibility on themselves, that some of it's appropriate, but not all of it is. And we often take way too much ownership of that. My students did really badly in exams. That can be quite heartbreaking. Did they get a good or a bad rank? I don't care. But like, say, you might teach a group of students and they worked really hard for something and you put a lot of effort into them and they still got a result that was really disappointing to them. I've been in that point a number of times throughout my career, and you take that on and it weighs heavy on you, and you've got to be able to talk to someone about that. If you don't, that psychological weight will crush you. So things like that are really important in terms of your self-care and how you respond to stress. In terms of career setbacks, I reckon every time I've tried something really big and new, like something that you would look at objectively as a promotion, right? Every time I've done that has been terrifying. And I've gone into that new role and I thought to myself, I've always had a moment where I thought, what have I done? Is it too late to hit undo? Can I just go back? Because, I used to be really good at that thing that I did before. I'm really good at just interacting with students in the classroom. And now I have to lead other teachers. I have to lead other teachers who are more experienced than me and who may know more than me. I have to do all kinds of things which I didn't even know needed to be done, and I don't even know who to ask to get help on these. I went through some really dark times trying to understand how will I walk through that and how will I get better at that. And I'm not joking, I thought this would all be easier if I just stop this and just go back to my old job, right? Except now someone else has taken my old job, so I can't go back to that one. So in terms of career setbacks, yeah. Someone said once that if no one hates you for what you're doing, then you're probably not doing anything worthwhile and important. Which is a really big statement to make, right? I don't know if it's 100% true, but I think it is largely true in that if you're doing something that matters, then probably it's something where people don't all agree about how it should be done, right? It's like, hey, I think we should really do X. It's like, well, you know what? Part of why that thing's not being done is because everyone has contrary perspectives and views on what should be done about that. And if you go and say, I'm going to do Y, then some people will agree with you and there will be others who are going to fight you. They're going to say, no, this is not what we should need. You should do this instead. And I'm a fairly conflict-averse person. I don't like getting into arguments. In fact, I really like it when people like me. And so when you have to do something which is going to place you in a position where people don't like you and disagree with what you do, those are huge, personal setbacks, and I've always found them hard, but I think that's part of what it means to be courageous in whatever profession you go through, whether that's teaching, education, or something else. So, been through lots of those setbacks, but I'd also like to think that every single one has made me stronger and better at what I do.